to have this conversation with us and to share your personal experiences and also your views on everything that's happening. You touched on many big topics and important points, the history of everything that happened, settlement policies, international law. But we only have half an hour left, and we could have a long discussion about this, but I just want to focus on one particular question that you haven't touched upon that much. And that's what the reason for this legal procedure. And I think that was the question of whether rents should be paid. And I know that until 1993, rents have been paid, but afterwards that hasn't been the case. And I was wondering if you can shed some more light on that and what the reason has been for not paying these rents.
And your question is to Mr. Al Kurd?
To Al Kurd or Mr. Zakaria.
Sorry, Mr. Al Kurd. Wait. First, we do two other members because we don't have so much time. Mr. Segers, what's your question? Please write the questions down.
Good afternoon, and thank you for sharing your stories with us. I'm sorry to hear about suffering and fear. I don't want anyone to live in fear and this kind of circumstance. So we all hope with you for a peaceful solution for all the cases that are on the table now. And I have a historical question. Before 48, I don't think there was an East Jerusalem or West Jerusalem. It was just Jerusalem. And there were also Jewish citizens living in the eastern part of Jerusalem. So after the 48 war, there was a separation, and now we are still living in these difficult circumstances, and also legal. You have a lot of legal issues. But from your point of view, is there also, I mean, are there also Jews with the right to live in East Jerusalem, and are there old rights before 48 that are still valid? Is that your view? I mean, what is your view on a multi-ethnic and maybe multinational city of Jerusalem in both East and West?
Thank you. Mr. Al Kurd, would you like to start answering the questions?
Yeah, I'm sorely interested to know where the Liberal member of Parliament got the information that we've paid rent up until 1993. I believe that as a member of government, you should know your information, and your information should be correct. And what you just did was spill this information. We have never paid a dollar to any entity whatsoever. When you pay rent to someone, in case you didn't know, you need to have a landlord. We here in Sheikh Jarrah have never had a landlord. These homes were built for us by the Jordanian government. The issue was that you have Israeli settlers presenting documents to Israeli courts claiming Israeli ownership. The asymmetry here is that the Israeli courts will never and have never looked at the documents that we presented. I utterly reject the notion that we are supposed to pay rent to a non-existent landlord, and I'm ashamed to be asked such an ignorant question that clearly has no education whatsoever on the matter. I urge you to take a minute to read on the matter before you ask such ignorant questions. Thank you.
Were that all the questions, Mr. Al Kurd, also from the other members?
Thank you. I'll answer the questions, but I wanted to just, I forgot to answer an earlier question that was posed about a multinational city, a multi-ethnic city. And I'll just say that I think, quite honestly, I think it's pretty racist to ask me this question, given the fact that we are not, Palestinians are not the ones who are going into Jewish neighborhoods and throwing tear gas into 95-year-old people's homes. We are not the ones going into people's homes and shooting them with rubber-coated bullets in their spines and causing them to be paralyzed. We are not the ones working on a systemic level to expel the Palestinian population, the Jewish population. That is not what's happening. So when you ask me about a multi-ethnic city, as if I have the power to even consider it, it's a red herring. It's a distraction from what is going on the ground, that there's a systemic policy of forced ethnic displacement that is taking place against me and my people and the Palestinians. So please be reminded of this and be reminded of the power dynamics when you dare ask a question about a multinational, multi-ethnic Jerusalem city, as if Palestinians have anything to do with the violence taking place against them. We are not the ones going into Jewish neighborhoods and stabbing Jews. We are not the ones going into Jewish neighborhoods and chanting death to Jews. We're not doing any of that. They're the ones who are coming into our neighborhoods with their guns, with their rifles, with their bags of stones, with their knives, with their gas, and chanting death to Arabs. Do not ask me about coexistence when I have zero power deciding if I can coexist or not. Now, to use that to elaborate on the point of the daily practices, what's happening is we have 4 entrances to the neighborhood, all of which have cement barriers around them, and all of these cement barriers serve as a stop, as a checkpoint for us Palestinians. So today, when I walked into the neighborhood this morning, I had to show the police officer my ID. He called me by my name because they know us. He said, Muhammad Al Kurd, come show me your ID, as if he doesn't know I live there. I showed him my ID. My ID said Sheikh Jarrah, but it didn't say the exact name of the street that I live on. So he investigated me for 5 minutes, and then he started screaming at me, no reason whatsoever, and then he shoved me around. And I want to say that this is not an anomaly. This is not a unique situation. They have a vendetta against us, and they're doing everything they can to make our lives a living hell, because we will manage to enter and escape the gatekeeping of people like diplomats and politicians and mainstream journalists, and we were able to show the truth for what it is. Meanwhile, Israeli settlers, and we have video proof of this, we have pictures of this, Israeli settlers can just walk in, no questions asked. Most of them, if not all of them, have their rifles on their belts and can just walk in, no questions asked. This morning, yesterday, a week ago, we are constantly hearing more and more threats from Israeli settlers about wanting to burn our homes, about wanting to take over our homes and massacre us, and they do this with the Israeli officers present. In contrast, we tried to fly a kite in our neighborhood the other day, and the people who flew the kite got assaulted and arrested. 2 Palestinian journalists were standing taking videos of the settlers with the guns, and both of them were assaulted and arrested for 5 days. There's a clear policy of apartheid here that we have documented to a T, and we have exquisite proof of it. In terms of sanctions, I think boycotting Israeli products is a good start. I think expelling the ambassador and expelling any kind of diplomatic, economic, political relationships with Israel is a good start. To remind you of what's happening here, we are facing a systematic, calculated governmental push to dispel and displace all of us who are Palestinian from our cities. Many of us in the Gaza Strip have gotten carpet bombed under the excuse that there's a terrorist group in the Gaza Strip, which is, not to say the least, a red herring. This is not about anything but about how much you care about Palestinian life. And your government, for the longest time, have proved time and time again that you do not care about Palestinians. This is proven by some of the questions that I got asked today, some of the racist, insensitive questions that you have asked me today. But this is also proven by the lack of action on your government's behalf. So those of you who are enthusiastic, those of you who are sympathetic, I thank you. And I hold your hand, and I really thank you. And I urge you to push for sanctions, because we are pushing your people, the people of that country, to protest and put pressure on you. So this is not going to be the last time you're going to hear about Palestinian human rights and Palestinians' right to liberation. But it's up to you to take a stance and care about Palestinian rights. It's up to you to see what's happening on the ground for what it is and stop being racist and take a stand to support Palestinians.